We have too much parking, like way too much parking. The US alone has an estimated 2 billion parking spots, which accounts for 5% of urban land dedicated to just that single function. And 45% of this parking is completely unused. It's just wasting space in our cities and making places more hostile to anyone outside of a car. But there's a solution to this problem, and it would give us something much more useful than empty, barren pavement. Most downtowns in the US and Canada have an insane amount of space allocated to parking. Usually that's in the form of surface parking lots, on-street parking, or multi-level parking garages. In some cities like Arlington, Texas, over 40% of the downtown space is just parking. Why even have a downtown at that point? Just pave the whole city. And with more people living in urban areas each year, it makes no sense to be dedicating so much space to something so useless, especially when a city's urban core is the most profitable and desirable place to live. Not to mention that a downtown inherently shouldn't need as much parking compared to anywhere else in the city because everything is closer. And some cities already know this. Just look at downtown New York, for example. Only 1% of its surface space is allocated to parking. The rest of the city isn't so great though. The solution some cities are implementing is so painfully obvious I don't know why it wasn't done sooner. Replacing these plots of pavement with houses and businesses. The example I'm going to use to show this is the first place where I really became aware of all of this. I was moving from Calgary to Coquitlam, a city in the Metro Vancouver area. And while looking at the area on Google Earth, I saw this monstrosity near the city center. What's crazy about this area and why I found it so interesting is because of the insane amount of parking relative to the density. For the people who live here, there's really no need for any of this extra parking. Most of the people who live in this area just walk or take transit to get to the places they need to go because they literally live right next to them. But this mall was built in 1979 and people really liked their cars during that time. Seriously, for some reason they were so desperate for more parking that they just made a ramp to the roof of the Walmart. But the city has acknowledged that there's too much parking. They're also aware that the people who use the mall and transit the most are those who live the closest. And those people aren't the ones doing the most driving. So it doesn't make sense to dedicate all this space to people who live here, especially since the city has invested so much into better bus service and bike infrastructure leading from the suburbs to the malls and transit hubs. These parking lots are just making those other modes of transportation less effective when people can just drive and use the unlimited free parking. So the solution they came up with is to redevelop these unused parking lots into transit-oriented mixed-use residential buildings. And it doesn't end there. The city has lowered parking requirements for new residential buildings that are mostly for renters, people who are statistically less likely to own a car, and for buildings that are built closer to transit, which also decreases the probability of someone owning a car. The people living in this area won't have to deal with all this parking and the extra car traffic that comes with it. But my biggest concern, aside from the fact that every new building that's being built is 1,000,000 stories tall for some reason, is leaving the super wide stroads cutting directly through the new downtown. But maybe this is something they'll fix in the future. For now, I think replacing these parking lots with mixed-use, transit-oriented developments is better than half-empty parking lots. And I'm glad to see that parking requirements are being changed to actually reflect car ownership rather than random, unrelated metrics. And most cities have a ton of downtown parking just like this, and while they might not have the luxury of being directly next to a busy train station, most cities would probably benefit from redeveloping their mostly vacant downtown parking lots into literally anything else. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button, and I put out new videos every Saturday, so don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more.